So good morning, everybody. Congratulations. Just to start, I think that this is quite a good opportunity for me to learn from you how you see things, to have an exchange of views and ideas on how we can proceed, the type of concerns that you may want to raise dealing with the time to come. Some of you are still students in a master course, but some of you are already working, young professionals. You got an award, recognition, which was important, but you have been keeping ongoing in a process of training and experiencing the first professional activities, allowing you to identify that sometimes what you were expecting is not really what you find. In other occasions, identifying things that work much better than what you expected. And in any circumstance, whatever it happens, always willing to learn more, to do more, to contribute more, or to expect more. So I think that this is a good context to have this opportunity to discuss with you how you see things. We were trying to start focusing on competition because that's the field of expertise that you had identified, that's your priority. But we also knew that there are many things that do matter, that are not just this professional approach, that in order to retain talent, to ensure that you feel like willing to contribute more or having the opportunity to contribute as much as you think that you can contribute, there may be other things that are related to just the knowledge and the understanding of a concrete subject, a concrete professional scope. And this is why this exercise, I think, that is an open exercise. Of course, we center our attention, we focus our attention on the main topics that were related to your specialization. But connected to that, the question on how we can ensure that Europe fits for purpose when thinking about the young Europeans, there were other issues that came up. What about housing? What about opportunities, equal opportunities for the young male professionals and the young female professionals? What about education and skilling? What about job expectations? What about what happens in other parts of the world, which is also important when thinking on how the things are evolving. I feel proud of being European, just to be very honest, even if there are many things that still need to be improved. But it is important also to be aware of those things that we take for granted sometimes and we need to take care of because they are not always something that is granted forever. So I would like to invite you to have a round around the table to introduce yourself, to make the initial comments on how you see things, what you expect, what you may like to draw the attention of the whole group, and I'm more than happy to have this conversation with you all. Starting by you.
You.
If it is okay. It's okay?
It's perfect.
Perfect, okay.
So good morning. It's an honor to be here and talk to you today. So my name is Guillaume. I'm actually working on a topic that you're very familiar with. I'm working in the European Commission on the implementation of the Digital Market Act. So previously I was a PhD student and I joined the Commission about 1 year and a half ago. And as a topic that I want to bring your attention to would be how to ensure that young researchers stay within the EU and are committed to work on topics for more societal utility and how to empower young researchers to stay in the EU, not necessarily being willing to move, especially elsewhere in the US, for the benefits of the whole society in the EU. Yeah.
Okay.
Hello, my name is Anna. I am a second-year PhD student right now in competition policy. Thank you so much for the opportunity to come here and discuss. And the topic that I want to bring the attention to the most is housing availability for young people, and especially since we are very close to the International Women's Day for young single women that have harder time assessing mortgages and that are often discriminated in the housing market.
Good morning. My name is Mateusz Mincbrek. I'm from Poland. I'm the fifth year student on the University of Warsaw. As you may know, Poland has now be the leader on the European Union to have the policy. What can I say? I want to bear in mind about the supporting startups and researchers in the European Union, because I think the startups are the background, the background to the European innovations and economy. Thank you.
Hello, thank you for having me here. I'm Marina. I'm coming from Spain. I'm studying, in fact, European Studies Master. And the point I would like to bring today here is related to job research according to youth, how we can help and improve the conditions youth have to find some programs to gain practical experience in order to stay here, as Guillaume says, that they stay in the European Union. So not to lose talented youth and brain drain. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Elia. I'm a master's student in European law and in business and competition law. And the point I would like to bring is about research centers and how we can create maybe wider access for young people to have access to more centralized research centers and improve the competitive side of research of the Union. Thank you.
Hi, hello, thank you for having me here. My name is Agustina. I work for a private company in London. I've been working in the tech startup sector for 4 years now after finishing my studies in European competition law. And something that I would really like for today is that it sparks some kind of bold or actionable ideas on how to make sure that the European Union becomes a place where startups want to grow, want to establish them, want to stay, and also give them the tools to compete in today's international markets. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Faustine Coelho, and I'm a student in Lille, France. And for me, the most important thing is, and it comes really close to what Agustina said, how Europe stay competitive and how we will have interesting job at the heart of the world, like we will still be as competitive as other part of the world.
Hi, thank you first of all for the invitation. My name is Thomas. I am a master's student at Utrecht University in the master program European Law. What I would like to discuss today is the housing problem, which is not only evident in Europe but also in the Netherlands itself. Many people in their 20s and 30s, they cannot find housing. And I think that also leads to living, making it much more unattractive to live in Europe. So I hope we can discuss it today. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Rebecca. I'm also a student in European law in the Netherlands. The point I would like to bring today is to look at how we can keep women in tech, specifically in startups and in developing technologies so that they can have an active voice in how technology is developed going forward and how we can encourage them to stay in such fields. Thank you.
Hi, thank you. So my name is Oriane and I'm a competition economist working in Brussels in consulting. And the topic that I want to talk about today is gender equality, and in particular all the unpaid labor that is often done by women and that brings a lot of value to society, and yet it's not fully recognized, and it also prevents women to fully participating into the workforce.
Good morning. My name is David Perez del Amo. I am a lawyer at an international law firm just around the corner. I've been practicing competition law and European law for 5 years. And the topic of my proposal is focused on how antitrust state aid rules may contribute to addressing or mitigating the housing crisis. And also more generally, because I'm a very pragmatic man, I think it would be great if we could land on concrete takeaways and hopefully lead the Commission to take concrete action. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Valentin, and I'm a student of international law at Tilburg University in the Netherlands. And I just wanted to say that I'm honored to be here and to represent the interests and concerns of young people around Europe. And I wanted to bring attention to the topic of youth unemployment and just in general, how can we improve the experience of students from transitioning from university to the work environment. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Corentin. I study economics and management at Bocconi University in Milan. Thank you very much for the invitation. What really stood out to me from the conversations that we've had was the necessity to ensure that young people are able to live comfortable and fulfilling lives thanks to their labor, regardless of their personal background, whether it be their gender, their origins, or their economical background.
Hello, thank you for inviting us here. My name is Veva, and I'm a second-year master's student in politics and policy analysis. And I hope that from this dialogue we will find some policies that focus on competition, but without forgetting the losers usually of the policy, so young people, women, and lower income households.
So you raised lots of things. If you allow me, I could try to identify 2-3 groups of things, and I could make some comments, but do not think that it is me who is going to do all the homework. I'm going to raise questions back to you on these things. Because you raise, on one side, the housing aspect. This is something that is increasingly a problem for many people. For a very long time, we thought that this was a problem that deserved the attention of the public institutions when dealing with the most vulnerable groups of people, but now we know that it is increasingly a problem that affects to the middle class, so it's quite much more larger than what it used to be, and I will come back to that. The second group of issues that you raise deal with how we can keep on improving the capacity and the instruments that provide equal opportunities for all and that ensure equal access and equal rights for all, very much in particular when we talk about women or when we talk about anyone that could feel that depending on the origin, the geographically or culturally may have more difficulties to succeed in professional and personal terms. So that is an issue which is also important in the comments that you have raised. And the third group of questions deal with aspects dealing with competition, antitrust, or capacity to breach an idea when thinking of the initial phases of the startups' possibilities towards full deployment, providing the opportunity to invest in a much more competitive and successful European economy. These are the three main groups of things that I understood from your comments. I have some answers, but before entering into my answers, I want to hear your answers and proposals. Because I wonder where you identify the questions that are behind the problem of the affordability of housing, how you assess. Is it a question of lack of offer, speculation because it is not a regulated market, different activities being targeted on housing, lack of involvement of the public institutions, so to ensure that there are different pricing conditions depending on the people that want to access. So I would like to have your views on where you identify the problems dealing with housing and to what extent you've already thought about some ideas on how to solve this thing. This is new for the European Commission. As you know, housing was not an issue that was reflected in any manner in the treaties or the existing regulation apart from safety, energy performance, and accessibility. Accessibility, do you say that in English? Yes, we say that in English. For people that maybe might count on any type of disability or things like this. But it is not something that was part of the core policies within the European Commission, and we are building that. So I'm very interested to hear your views on where the problems are, and if you have any idea on how we can be more effective in the responses. And I promise I will come back later on with your comments and my own comments. Okay, and then we will go into the second group, how to ensure that we have equal opportunities for all, and then we'll go to the competition and general economy aspects, including the bridging from the initial phase, the startups approach, to a full deployment and easygoing in order to build business opportunities in Europe. Okay, I see a very enthusiastic reaction. I'm very happy. Please, go ahead. Anna.
Yes, thank you so much. So indeed, what you said is fully true. Housing is a very complex issue that takes into account both investment, both lack of offer, but also just increasing income inequality in a lot of European countries. So the problem is just very broad, and I think that makes the subject very interesting and very important to approach in the upcoming cabinet. From my personal perspective, I think speculative investment in housing is something that the Commission can really tackle in a more direct way, be it through financial instruments that can maybe back up safe housing growth prices, or even just steps that have already been taken into some cities banning, for example, Airbnb, and really keeping the housing supply more available to the people. And I think David also had some comments on this.
Thank you so much. David?
Well, the mic, no, fine, okay. No, obviously, I think that we are all aware of the housing problem. I'm not going to spend a lot of time describing it, but maybe I think it's good to pause just for a moment and hear a couple of data points. I was very surprised to see, well, I felt it, but I was also very surprised to see numbers that in the last 10 years, the prices of housing has increased by over 50%. That is on average across the entire EU. That also applies equally to rent. And I feel that also very personally. I think not myself, because I think in Brussels there are better opportunities in general. There's a better balance between economic opportunities and house accessibility. But when I speak to friends back home that decide to pursue their careers in Spain, and also speaking with colleagues, new friends that they work and live in other member states, there's obviously a huge viability gap between the price of housing and the income. Because obviously the price of housing has increased dramatically over the last 10 years, and it has significantly outpaced inflation, and both have also significantly outpaced income. And as a result, I think this connects very well with the broader topic of the discussion, because it really hampers the mobility of young employees who are seeking to maximize their potential, because obviously, even if you may be attractive to a certain employer in a core business center, it may not be possible for you to move. And I've seen this also from friends back home, that they had to commute from Toledo to Madrid because it was really impossible to cover the cost of rent in Madrid. And within the more general causes that I identify connecting with Anna, there's obviously supply and demand. There's limited supply because there's an increase in the cost of construction, particular raw materials. And interestingly, it seems that there's a very big disparity in the cost of raw materials between member states, which I think indicates that there's a bit of a potentially a market failure that can be addressed within the within the Commission's policy and competence framework. There's also a scarcity of land. There's a decrease in construction activities. There's also, from the demand side, we have mentioned speculation, and there's also a lot of increase in short-term rentals. And I think there's room for your Commission to intervene within your competence framework, respecting the basic principles of conferral, subsidiarity. It also fits very prominently in your mandate, in your mission letter, which you know very well for sure. And I was coming in terms of solutions from what I know, which is competition law. I've been a practicing lawyer, so obviously that is the first thing that came to mind. There we have exclusive competence, so obviously there's more leeway to act. And I would propose to take an incremental approach, because, well, we could start by sectoral inquiry. There is a possibility that is provided in Article 17 of the antitrust procedural framework. The conditions are fulfilled because there's a certain trend, rigidity in prices. This is across member states, so it justifies also a common approach. And then that would allow us to understand also more in detail the structural and behavioral factors that contribute to the crisis, because it is true that it's just not behavior. There's a lot of layers that are involved in this. And obviously the Commission cannot intervene in all of these layers, but at least it would allow the Commission to raise attention, to collaborate with different competence level, with local authorities, national authorities, with national competition authorities. And then on the more specific thing the Commission can do, it could certainly pursue antitrust action against certain anti-competitive behaviors that may take place throughout the entire value chain. That can be the construction services, raw materials that affect the price of housing. That can also be engineering services, property management. There's a lot of layers that are involved in this. And then also from the income perspective as well, there are labor restrictions to young employees that limit the possibilities of accessing housing as well. And I was looking also at the decisional practice of different national authorities, and there's been different efforts against this kind of practices, so it would be interesting to take a common approach and thrust. And
thank you very much, David, for the comments. If you don't mind, I think we have someone else who wanted to speak.
This is very interesting, because what I get is that first there is this common sense that there may be an impact of this lack of affordable houses for building opportunities, and that this impact may be particularly relevant among the young people, because it is not so easy to find an affordable house. The second thing that I've got from your comments is that, in fact, you are identifying different elements that could be handled in the existing legal framework that is applied to work coming from the Commission, that go from how we deal with the financial markets, to what extent we may combine the enforcement of different competition tools, how we can learn on the eventual market failures in the different layers of the value chain, how we can work with the different layers of the administration, so to ensure that there is offer and that that can create opportunities for more affordable prices. There was something that is still missing in this conversation, which is to what extent, if there is this eventual speculation, we may come up with support to drastically increase the offer and count on public funding to ensure a proper blending between public and private. To what extent it is something that can be managed through regulation, or to what extent it is something that may require some type of state aid being involved in this exercise. I don't know if you have any views on that, because I'm taking notes so to ensure that my team, who is already here with me, is going to help me to provide the right answers according to your ideas on this point. Any comments? Elia, please, go ahead.
An issue that hasn't been addressed is also but you mentioned it, Anna, is the vacant housing. Like maybe find a balance between regulating for a period of time in which housing would be vacant, because the private use are still need to be free. But in terms of accessibility, it would be interesting to find this kind of balance, and to know at what time period do we make a house available for people? Because if they are vacant for such a long time, that practically means that the person don't need it at the moment. So maybe thinking about state aid, or I don't know, working with national authorities just to implement a specific system.
I have to share with you that this is quite a challenging issue, and I'm going to take two examples. Yesterday I was in Barcelona for the Mobile World Congress, and even a hotel room, because of the Mobile World Congress with more than 110,000 people in a week in Barcelona, so like a city entering into a big city, were mad. Hotel prices. But it is true that it is a city that to a certain extent shows the difficulties to combine the attractiveness of being a very nice city for tourists with the demand of young people that would like to remain. So, can we help only through a state aid, or we need regulation? And that's where you were coming on the speculation and the Airbnb and things like that. Second example, very tiny rural areas, village in rural areas, where people may like to remain because there is digital connectivity, because it is open space, because the quality of life may be very interesting, but in fact there is not offer, because either you construct yourself or you renovate yourself an existing house, or you cannot find anyone willing to provide this service, not for rental or for acquisition. So, two very different realities that in fact happen in many places all around Europe. Any comments on that, Anna?
Sorry, yeah, if I may, again, thank you so much for giving the word to me. So I will answer your question from my perspective very directly. So it's a matter of when do we regulate, when do we provide state aid. I think, and I speak, I guess, for a lot of people, that state aid, how we see it for a lot of us, would have to be given to the construction sector, but still aligning with the green and clean industrial policy outcomes. So not just...
That is very good.
Not just state aid, but state aid that assures adaptability of housing. We know that some areas in Europe are very much exposed to very risky natural events as an effect of climate change. We cannot build more in those areas. Those houses would just be flooded away. And that's something that needs to be considered. And regulation, and coming back to Barcelona, and I live in Amsterdam, so I'm very affected also by this issue, and directly affected by, and by all the others in the Netherlands as well. Directly affected by this issue. It is a matter of really offering investors a safe alternative investment that they can put their money in that will have return, and that comes again to the startup and startup scalability, having a common framework of the union where we can scale up those things, and where investors can access financing that is not just housing speculation. Yes.
Which I think it is pretty interesting because you have been commenting on that, those coming from the Netherlands, which is very true. I remember a couple of years ago where some news came up saying that since the quality of the universities in the Netherlands were so impressive and the quality of life was so impressive, there were problems with housing, and there were even limitations in terms of Erasmus, so to ensure that the nationals and the local communities could benefit from the provision of services that were around this university. So, in fact, as you have very nicely pointed out, this is an issue that requires the attention of the public institutions, how we can combine free movement, free access to the services, ensuring that the local communities can benefit from what it is being provided, and how it relates very directly on some very critical aspects for the expectations of the young people, which is education and housing. So I think that this is quite interesting. Mateusz has something to add, and then we can move to the second.
Yes, I have one practical side note from Poland. We have the same issue about the housing, and one of our minister of our government has requested to our Polish National Authority to do some researches from the housing markets. And national Polish competition say it's not our competences, because we only have to search the monopolist, dominant position or something. And they say this is the policy of the government or maybe of the European Commission. So I think the issue is in our policy, not in the empowering the Polish or the national competition authorities, because we have the instruments, the monopolies, the dominant position, and another practical aspects. We have the same issue in the university. The academics are it's not that cheap. Many of the students, we have the protest in our University of Warsaw. It's a very big issue because our university don't have so much money. So we need to have maybe some funds to university, have to collaborations to build maybe academics for the students. Thank you.
Okay, no, thank you so much, because you have tackled also a very interesting approach, which is who is the adequate institution, which is the right angle, how we combine the different perspectives, taking into consideration that national realities may differ a lot, to address this concern. And it is true that being very simplistic in the approach. There may be approaches saying, okay, the rights to property may allow any owner to do whatever and to get the opportunity benefits of hiring an apartment. But how we can combine that with the right of people to find an affordable housing solution, how there may be market failures, but it is not so easy to identify which market failures and how we work with them, or to what extent the public initiative may help into the provision of some housing solutions, in particular for certain groups of people, including students coming to universities during the university term. So I think that this shows how we need to address lots of things, taking into consideration that we need to respect the different competence of the different national institutions being combined with the European Commission role, but that it could be very important to be, I could say, effective in the type of proposals that we come up with, because it is a pressing issue a little bit everywhere. Rebecca.
Yes, all right, sorry. Maybe also a little bridge with the next issue. There is usually in cities you can find student housing that is meant specifically for housing, and it is when you get out of university that you're suddenly faced with the problem, I need to find an apartment, I need to find somewhere to stay while I'm looking for a job. And it is, at least in the Netherlands, legal to discriminate if there's multiple people from different households who want to live together within houses. So I think that it might be possible for these people who are just coming out of universities and are still looking for jobs and do not have the right income to be able to rent on their own, see if it is possible to offer more house sharing opportunities for those without the university context specifically. That would be a proposal.
This is great because, as you say, we are bridging to the next phase, how we can deal with these different opportunities for all and how we can combine the provision of services and the capacity to act to ensure that this does not happen. And Valentin has something to say.
Yeah, I just wanted to add a final comment on the housing issue, because this article that you shared, that you've read about the students from one member state moving to another member state to study, I've been through this experience because I mentioned that I study in the Netherlands, but I originally come from Bulgaria, so I moved. So I've been through this process, and I can tell you that the housing crisis is really severe, especially in the Netherlands. And two things I really would like to point out that I think they need to be, we can address at least one of them on competition law, is that the student accommodations, like I have friends who pay for one room for student room in a student housing, which is not entirely private, it's just for students. You pay 1,200 euros, which is just insane considering that these people have no or minimum income. And also there's another issue that a lot of these places, they're just people who rent it out, they don't want to international people from different member states. So that's also one huge issue. And yes, I just wanted to share this experience in more detail.
You enter into something, I didn't intend to raise this point when commenting on these limitations that create huge stress for the local communities, but also how it affects, and you are very right when taking this, and not to make any negative comment, but to raise a point which is a relevant fact, that in case this type of stress take place, this may drive easily towards situations where you need to choose, and it may have an impact in the way we may address opportunities among all of us. And you were commenting on the something which could be part of the basic freedoms in the European Union as they have been evolving, not just workers but students and so on, which is an interesting approach, because when thinking on how we can combat discrimination, there has always been this idea that there may be housing may be a way to differentiate among the different Europeans because of the way where we live, because of in the central area or in the surroundings, and the cost of living excluding lots of population. So it's not only the issue on how it applies to the people during the education time, but more broadly. So I think that this is something that also matters: inclusion or exclusion through housing policies, which is quite relevant. But I also wanted to comment, and I take Rebecca's point and your point to bridge into the second group of issues about how to ensure opportunities for all, how to get deeper into the general goal to retain talent. You were commenting on that in the first round, the expectations dealing with jobs, sustainability, research, capacity to remain. I could say that there may be a combination of policies, expectations, and timings. So, to what extent the red tape may make our life a little bit more complicated than what it may happen in other geographies, to what extent the expectations in terms of quality of life do not fit for purpose, to what extent it may be something that can be improved, but in general terms we count on a kind of soft services that are being provided under any circumstance that do not exist in other geographies. So how you see these connected aspects from housing towards something which is a little bit broader in terms of opportunities, expectations, and to retain talent. I got the point. Housing is a very important issue to retain talent, but we are moving towards discrimination, opportunities, reliability on the European economy, and then we will go later on how it works in terms of business cases, opportunities, competition, and single market. But let's get this general view on what about retaining talent, opportunities, risk of discrimination, existing, incoming, or disappear discrimination things. How do you feel about that? Who wants to take the floor? Nobody? Yes, please.
So obviously one of the major issues that Europe is currently facing is its aging population. And that is part of why it is so important to invest in young researchers, invest in young people, because we don't have as many of them as we used to. And this is a very clear challenge. And this is really exemplified in the problem of inheritance, because, again, Europe's aging population means that it's going to have a lot of inheritance are going to represent an ever-increasing amount of money. And as of right now, the way that inheritances work in the European Union is that for most countries, you can either have your inheritance be done in the country where you last lived or in a country whose nationality you hold. And to me, this seems to be a bit, this doesn't seem to be optimal to me. I believe that a better way of doing things would be to allocate the share of inheritance that each country has a claim to based on, for example, how long you have spent in said country or how much you have earned in said country. This would mean that European countries would not face the risk of having, would face lower incentives to keep the inheritance taxes rate low out of fear that people would go to other countries. If you spend 20 years in France and that's where you worked for half of your career, it seems fair that France would have a claim to part of the money you have, even if you lived the last years of your life in, for example, Luxembourg. And this would improve the ability of member states to collect money, and that money could then be invested into funding programs that would support young people. It is very obvious that there's a number of ways in which the EU, with more money, could rival with the United States. A very simple example would be, for example, the amount that PhD students get in stipend, which is absolutely incomparable between top institutions in the United States or in Canada and what we get in the European Union.
Thank you. According to that, it's true that students, when we finish our studies or we don't find the place to gain practical experience. And this is the fact that makes us go to another countries, to the United States or to other places where we can gain that. Now we are achieving like certificates, courses or something, but on the practical scenario, we don't have those skills. So my point here was like Corinthians like a program, attractive one, where companies and universities, alongside with students, can find those opportunities. I was thinking something like in Spain we have the ethics program, so it's something like that where agreements to facilitate this transition from the educational level to the labor market. Also like tax benefits for those companies that hire those students, or also like subsidize for those students. At the end, if there is no this, if we don't have this own initiative by companies and university, that the European Union is behind in proving that we have this practical experience that we gave and we achieved so that we can go into the European Union labor market. At the end, it's something that will increase the competitiveness of the European Union and will increase the growth of the EU. So.
Thank you. So I'll come back to this this point I made earlier, and that was mentioned on research and how to retain young researchers. So indeed, in the EU, we have great universities, we have top schools, and we also have a great researchers and a big pool of PhD students. But I mean, I was discussing with Anna earlier today, and we were in the same fields in economics, and actually our wages were mine was half hers. So what I'm saying is that PhD life is hard, and also the career prospect in the EU is also quite low compared to the US, where you get way more compensation, more access to dynamic research environment. And in Europe, I think that the university market, it's quite concentrated in the sense that you have top schools. And my idea would be I think we should work towards more decentralize the research, homogenize the EU research among different member states. My idea that I had is that the European Commission has this joint research center, which is based, there are several centers. How about making it a bit decentralized, like the European Union to fund researchers that are based in different universities? For me, that would make that would have the impact of having a lot of spillovers and retain talents to prevent them moving elsewhere.
I have to confess that I am very impressed because of what you are saying. 2 weeks ago, I was giving a lecture in the London School of Economics on Europe and the clean industrial model and the decarbonization and the green agenda, blah, blah. And then there was a young student who asked me, there are many people that, among the young group of people that support this green driving and this transformation. What can we do? And I said, well, you can do, I don't know, lots of things. The lecture was over, and then he approached me. No, wrong. You should have said since the very beginning that we young people should not just look for well-paid consultancy jobs, but work in research, in think tanks, in politics, in public administrations, to provide a better chance for a more prosperous future. And I say, okay, you're right. But you're doing that, some of you at least. You are commenting on how we can ensure that when someone who has the talent, the vocation, the willingness to invest in research can remain in Europe. And you're commenting on something which is probably true but not easy, because to a certain extent I can agree that there may be more dynamic careers in some of the American universities, but to a certain extent we also know that in the American universities you have to be rich or to get a huge credit that you could be paying I don't know how long before you get the capacity to reverse. So this is a very interesting thing, because to a certain extent we need to retain talent in many different aspects, more professional, consultancy, business orientation, but also in terms of research and capacity to ensure that today's talent provide tomorrow's solutions. So I think that this is quite a fair point. And at the same time, we know that to have high-quality research groups needs to create the ecosystems or to invest and to provide the ecosystems for whatever. You're free to make your research on whatever you want. We don't know where the breakthroughs may come from. And at the same time, this requires a concentration of efforts. But if we have a concentration of efforts, we may not be able to count on this decentralized approach. And then you enter into a different conversation, which is also very interesting, how to bridge the purely educational phase into the next phase, where there may be a need to ensure that there are opportunities for trainees to test how professional life may be, secondments in order to find out how you can start your research career. And I guess that, and that's a question back to you, I guess that something which is quite interesting is to find out how we can improve the capacity to move around Europe, because there have been several attempts to improve this capacity. So if you are a national coming from the Czech Republic, you go 2 years to make your research in Stockholm, and then you come back to Berlin. And so how we can ensure mobility in the research space and not just in the educational, purely educational period, first thing. Second thing, to what extent this mobility and this access to the professional life may require additional efforts coming or being promoted from the European level. I don't know if anyone has something to comment. Rebecca?
When we talk about the mobility within the European Union of young people, it made me think of the Erasmus program that we currently have between universities. And I think that maybe we could use a similar framework as like a database and a kind of stipend that could be given to people to go for a short amount of time, be it 6 months or 1 year, to another country, specifically to companies that would be willing, that are also looking for young talents, to sign up to with one application framework, or at least a regulated way of applying, and then with the small stipend from, for example, the EU, like it happens in Erasmus, to help support with the housing costs and the affordability, and that would make it more attractive for companies to look to take such students that have just graduated or within 2 years of graduating would like to make use of the program.
Just would like to add one point on this. So if we talk about mobility within the EU, we should also keep in mind that this inequality among the EU countries. So, for example, maybe many of the researchers would like to move to northern countries because salaries there are higher. So we would just move the problem from Southern Europe to Northern Europe, for example. So we should keep in mind to also maybe keep the same wages or equality for everybody, and not to just move the problem from one place to another.
This is very interesting. You say from southern countries to northern countries, eastern, western. What about the rural and urban divide? What do we do with that? Do we concentrate well-educated people in urban areas and we forget about rural areas? How we can? Because my feeling is that there may be an increasing feeling coming from inhabitants in rural areas that they are kind of second-row citizens, which is not good. And then how we can, I mean, living in a rural area may require engineering, or may require digital experts, or may require officials to provide services. So how we can ensure that those willing to stay and remain can stay and remain. Those that decide to move to metropolitan areas, to urban areas, do understand what it may be happening in rural areas. Those that may feel that in certain geographies it may be difficult to count on reasonable waves could benefit from a kind of leverage that ensures a level of incomes which is reasonable. To what extent there may be a capacity to introduce additional measures, or it is very difficult to deal with this. I remember the conversation that was taken in the previous mandate around the cohesion programs and the DG Regio, underlying the fact that we may be thinking more in terms of how we can create opportunities and not just how we can compensate because you live in a rural area. And this could happen also with this other divide, north-south, east-west. That also combines with some initiatives that you have been pointing out. Marina was commenting. Is there a possibility to create programs that can facilitate secondments to have the first professional experience? Can we think about this in heritage angle as something that can be managed in a different way? So any comments about this creation opportunities for all over Europe? Elia?
Yes, I think maybe it would be interesting to use this idea of research center and to decentralize it and making it more regional. So it would bring the opportunities for rural people to stay in the sectors, and it would also allow to really address the regional problems and regional issues. So the researchers that have been living there all their life are seeing what are the issues in terms of environmental issues, technological, etc. And the one that wants to move can also, because the center would be interconnected through, because they are European, they remain European. I don't know if that was very clear, but yeah.
So, Rebecca and Faustine, who has been very shy there up to now.
Maybe to add, I think in this aspect, specifically digitalization could help a lot if we could enforce rules or have some kind of allowance that would allow people to work from a distance. Then it would not make it so necessary in specific fields. I am taking law as the one I'm working in. You don't need a lot of equipment for that. If you can work from a distance, then you can also allow people to come from further away and not have to make such a conscious choice to move to capitals.
Well, I really think that we should focus our effort on smaller cities and to create kind of a web through the whole Europe. And because smaller cities are great, they are closer to rural area, but they need to be very interconnected. So this is where state aid could play a role through transportation to connect and to create really a web. And maybe bigger universities, bigger companies could create like smaller, how do you say, subsidiaries in the cities to create smaller centers. And because what we said before, we are in the digitalized area, so we can really easily communicate and we can work from distance. And if there were like a great transport web throughout Europe, it could be also, we can move quickly, and it will also be better for housing because cities are overwhelmed. Paris, all capitals, we cannot go further, and it doesn't make sense from a sustainable point of view to make bigger cities because then we need to take our cars. It's a problem. So smaller cities would solve also housing issues because this is where we can construct, and this is also where we have kind of a blank page to construct sustainable housing.
So thank you so much. How we can combine connectivity, mobility, small and big, and create these opportunities, and then to address some of the other issues that we were commenting. Guillaume and Valentin.
Just quickly, I think that the European Commission has a great tool for this decentralization of research. It's a funding tool with the European research grants. I don't know to what extent this is already the case, but it could be used as a criteria to what extent research respond to regional challenges and basically avoid concentration of funding in some schools. Yeah.
I mean, I would also like to point out probably very obvious fact, but I just wanted to point out that most of these internship opportunities that we mentioned, they are mostly unpaid in most member states. So I want to see this addressed in European level, and maybe this can also be done via the programs that were mentioned, can be included into the planning of the program. And also another issue that I noticed from my personal experiences has to do with the freedom movement of workers, is that now as I'm studying abroad and I want to go back and to do an internship, like companies are refusing, because I understand the field of law, it's bound to jurisdictions and you have to know really the national law, but I just want to also see this problem addressed, because I cannot, they don't want me here, they don't want me there.
We want you. Thank you so much. I think that you have raised lots of very interesting issues that cover a large list of topics, because in fact it's, yes, how we can build these opportunities from education to professional life, either if it is research or business oriented, how we can facilitate support programs that ensure that this may happen in a fair basis, I mean based on a level playing field also in terms of incomes, and how we can count on the different realities all around Europe that may require different approaches, which does not mean contradictory approaches, but probably focusing on the given circumstances that we are talking about when dealing with these demands. The other thing that I enjoyed a lot is that in fact you are pointing out something that is quite interesting. We started this second round of conversations with comments about aging. But in your comments, I did not identify any type of concern about your parents and grandparents as a difficulty to build opportunities, which is very important. I didn't identify either any comments on any type of discrimination about gender, which is also very important, because in many circumstances we may find ourselves in a given situation where these are real problems, and apparently if you are not commenting about that, it's because it is not being a problem for you, which I think it is something that we need to appreciate, because it is true that we need to build this intergenerational justice, if we can call it this way, but to be sure that we can accommodate the different needs of the different generations, And at the same time, we appreciate very much the fact that, irrespectively of your gender, you want to earn your life, to have a successful life, and to enjoy life in general terms. So I think that this is quite an interesting fact that I have checked through your comments and your silence. Oriana, you may want to challenge me.
Yes, indeed, I wanted to talk about gender equality. Thank you. So we are all familiar with the concept of GDP, right? But another concept is the GUDP. So it's a grossly undervalued domestic product, and that refers to all this work that is done regarding the care of children, but also care of the elderly people, housework in general, etc. All this work that is not paid, mostly done by women, but brings a lot of value to society and is basically indispensable, right, to have a functioning society. And yet, we have an issue, at least in economic terms, of undervaluation, right? Because value is not recognized, work is not getting paid, and we also have a problem of opportunity cost. Because the time you spend doing this care, you are not spending it doing something else, and for example, I don't know, doing research and contributing to whatever else that you could contribute to, right? So a solution for this could be to bring this unpaid labor into the actual workforce. So this is called substitute services, and it's basically paying a third party to do childcare. It already exists, of course, and there are professional childcare services, you have nursing home, etc., etc. But not everybody can access those services, and it seems to be that those markets, often enough, are not functioning properly. And here I think that we could do something about it, and what we could do is to focus on those specific markets and try to investigate what is going on, promote competition, and if we identify market failure that cannot be addressed, maybe, you know, using subsidies or tax reduction or any type of mechanism that could help improve the situation. And by doing that, we could potentially, you know, do several good things. So the first one would be to achieve some market efficiency, because if you have more competition, you have markets that function better, and necessarily this leads to better outcome, right? Better choices, for example. You are also freeing up some of the women time, and they can use it to participate into the labor force in other type of job. And you are also creating job with an actual and a fair remuneration, hopefully associated to them. Yeah, and if I quickly take the example of childcare, I think this is really, really important for, you know, gender equality and an actual unrestrained participation of women into the workforce. And I don't think we can achieve it when the cost of childcare is high enough that for many families, and especially, you know, family with lower income or that are more vulnerable, you have a very concrete question, which is, economically speaking, does it make more sense for one of us to stop working or to work part-time in order to not pay the full cost of childcare? Often enough, it's going to be the woman. And I mean, it's of course perfectly fine to stop working to take care of your child when it is a decision. But when you have to do it for economical reasons, and it's not a decision, it's a reaction to a market. And so the situation that we have, so it differs from in different member states, but generally speaking, you have two types of options. You can use the public sector. Their prices are going to be, well, it's not that cheap, but it can be reasonable because you have some subsidies. Sometimes you have mechanism where you pay based on your income or something like this, but it's very, very hard to secure a spot. Then you have the private sector. So their prices are going to be higher, but it's also quite hard to find a carer in the private sector. So we really have this problem of, you know, demand that exceeds supply. And in a functioning market, what you would expect to see is a supply that will readjust itself, right? You will have expansion, you will have entry, and consequently, prices will go down. But it seems that generally speaking, this is a huge issue that is not being solved, at least that is not solving itself in Europe. So we could investigate what's going on, trying to see if there is some, an effective competition is not working in this market, or the barrier to entry that we haven't identified, and what we could do to solve this issue and give more choice and more empowerment to women.
Thank you. Agustina?
Thank you. I think my point is directly related to Oriane's comment, and it's actually a return to work for women professionals. So my concern here is that I cannot recall the source, but I've read that out of European women professionals, only 65% of women are actually working, and after having kids, after taking maternity leave, only 25% of these women are kept in the workforce. So one of the comments, I think having better access to subsidized childcare is definitely important. But something that I also wanted to tackle is paternity leave, and how do we make sure that this is balanced among the men and women in the European Union. So just as a quick example, right, in Sweden, if I said that only in the European Union, only 25% of women return to work after having kids, I think in Sweden it's around 90%, right? And I think one of the reasons this is possible, it's because the maternity or parental leave, however you want to call it, it's mandatory for the men to take at least 3 months. So in the sense that if these are not taken, then they are lost, right? So from my view, this really encourages men to also take this, and it's not seen as something negative, the fact that women are taking maternity leave. So just to give you an example, some countries only have 1 month or 3 weeks of paternity leave and up to 6 months for women, which is great. And some women might actually want to have kids and not return to work. That's totally fine. But then also having the option to return to work, I find it quite hard nowadays. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. And we go to the competition directly. You have mentioned the competition also and the market failures that you have identified, but let's
I wanted to react as regards the external use of people, or the private sector when it comes to childcare and all the usually seen as more household and care related jobs. And that is specifically the job protection or the labor protection that we give people that do those jobs. I am talking specifically from now a Dutch point of view, but I know that there's a very different level of protection given to those that take, for example, cleaning services, for those that offer cleaning services, compared to someone who works at a company or even at a construction site. And I feel that these different levels of protection offered to those kinds of jobs that are usually done by women mostly, whether that is house care, child care, or caring for elderly, usually have less labor protection. So I think that this might be something to look into.
Okay. Thank you so much. I think that's what we were commenting later on, and I think that it is true that trying to address this type of failures is important at many different moments in the professional careers, and the data show that this is still the case, that it is difficult to count on a bigger share of women's participation in the labor market, and even when we arrive at the older age, it may be difficult to have higher pensions because the break time during the maternity period tends to be more impacting more on women than on men. So I think that there we need to keep on doing the discussion on whether there are public services to take care, whether we combine, so to ensure that there are new approaches that can create jobs is an important issue. But I'm happy that you raised these things, because not commenting on that is also a way to hide realities that sometimes are difficult, and there may be young women with more capacities to face these challenges, but there may be many others that may have many more difficulties to face these situations. So that's good, and then we enter into the competition. And what we do with the competition policy. Why I raise this point like that? Because you all know, because you are specialized in competition, that the reason why this came up at the end of the 19th century was to avoid the concentration of power in the markets, and that then how the different institutions may deal with this risk in order to ensure that innovation may come up, that the consumers' rights, including industrials and households, may be protected, that a well-functioning and transparent formation of prices, cost, markets do help and do benefit everybody. And well, that's true. I think that nobody can object on that. Then we realize that there are new kids on the block that come up with new features that make our life a little bit more difficult, because the market is not easily to be defined as it used to be. It is not that it has never been easy, but now it's even a little bit more complicated because they do not exist physically, because they have an increasing power and create dependencies that we all know and experience, and we could not live without this anymore. So we come into a situation where we wonder what we can do. And then we also think, well, this happens, and a strong enforcement of the competition policies needs to happen within the limits of the regulation. And at the same time, we know that we need to build a much more competitive Europe. And I come back to the origin of our conversation, how we can create opportunities in Europe, to what extent we trust our capacities to create these opportunities, to what extent we can make it a little bit easier to come from the research phase towards the full business deployment case in our economy. We see that the startups level start reasonably well, and then they disappear and they move, or they are acquired by someone else that becomes increasingly powerful and controls the development of these new ideas that could be contesting, challenging the existing players in a certain market. So all of this to say that I have just arrived to this field and I say, oh my God, how we are going to deal with this? How these young people that have been thinking about this and that have a new approach on how we can improve the use of our competition tools may help me to identify how to deliver. And I am very curious to get your ideas on that. Anyone willing to come in?
Before anyone answers, I'd just like to signal that we have very little time left, so we would love your opinions, of course, because I know we have some very interesting proposals, but please keep your interventions short.
Anna.
Can I just say one sentence? I think unified financial and capital markets.
That's a good idea, and in addition, I need someone else on board to deal with that, but that's a good idea. Rebecca.
Enforcement against no poach agreements. Enforcement against no poach agreements, so that people can actually move to places that offer better salaries and maybe help with some of the salary gap between the US and the EU.
Maybe addressing killer acquisitions, because I would like to recall you what happened in Lumina Grail, and really we have to strike the balance between legal certainty and protecting nascent industries from incumbents or more dominant incumbents. And of course, this can be addressed in various ways. The most popular, I would say, is the transaction value thresholds, also revision of the merger regulation, or just amending the national thresholds are ways that, or sector-specific rules for farm or tech, where we can see these acquisitions taking place. So that's about it.
And I want to point out about new competition tools. We need to introduce it. I know this is discussion about maybe 3 years ago and return against in Drogary report. So I think this is the best way.
You develop your ideas on new competition tools?
I think we have to have something like to have instruments to influence the market without evaluations. Because we need to have the market research, something like that in Great Britain. I think it's working there for 20 years. They have something similar in the UK. So I think the European Commission and Europe can be something like a leader to spread this idea on the whole of the globe. To the USA, I know the USA politicians or lawyers say, "Oh my God, it's really good. It's really good tools to maybe we can introduce in our country." So really, we need to have opportunity to have to look to the market and have introduce some instruments before the violations of breach of the law. So we can introduce some reminders in these markets. I know also it's working in Germany right now.
So we will pay attention to the Germans. We think about the thresholds for avoiding killer acquisitions. I don't know if it is only a question of thresholds or it may be a little bit more complicated, but this is interesting and probably one of the main tasks, how we can deal with that. Any other ideas? Oh, I'm surprised. No, I think that it is quite interesting because to a certain extent we realize that we have been front runners. So I guess that in terms of how the digital markets work or how we need to pay attention in a given open economy such as the European one, we need to ensure a level playing field with those willing to invest in Europe that may be coming heavily subsidized, and at the same time it is not so easy to ask or to get the response whether you have been heavily subsidized or not, and the information may not be so easy, so we need to accept or to modelize what it may mean. At the same time, it is true that we are proud to be bound by the rule of law and to take decisions based on evidences, so we need to respect all those aspects in procedural terms, in the legal context that we have given to our authorities. At the same time, there is something which is still missing, and that comes back to the Draghi report. Have we really fulfilled the creation of a single market with no fragmentation, or we are still midway where we need to identify how we can politically drive a much better involvement of the national authorities together with the European Commission, so to ensure that this may work a little bit better, or even to open this regime that could allow business opportunities being authorized, permitted directly through the European centralized decision or mutual recognition of what it is happening to avoid this level of fragmentation. And there are other issues that come up, no? That I have also identified, and that part of our current headaches. How we can speed up the level of innovation, not only to avoid killing innovation, but how we can provide a pro-competitive approach to ensure that we can count on business communities, industrial hubs, cooperating in a context that does not prevent competition, but that is a safe space where they can deliver much quicker solutions that are requested by the society, by the green requirements that are quite solid because we don't have the resources, and to facilitate the technological breakthroughs. So there are many things that have become a little bit of a headache to the very professional people in the DG competition, and that will require your brains to provide some ideas on how to proceed and how to keep on going, to be sure that we have tools that are fit for purpose in this given time of the 21st century in a very chaotic geopolitical context, without creating additional complications or without risking what we have achieved during decades in order to improve our single market. And what you have been commenting about your backgrounds and what you are doing right now, apart from having many lawyers around the table, which is very important because lawyers are very good. Economists are also very good, but lawyers can help to structure a little bit the decision making. You work in different fields, either research, consultancy, law firms, still in master. But I guess that it is going to be very important that you keep this forward-looking approach. So to be sure that you count on all the background that you have identified during the education and training period, the first experience in the professional opportunities, but also to be aware that we live in a given time, given circumstances, always surrounded by challenges, and that we cannot forget the context. It is impossible to forget the context. But you need to remind ourselves on the very basic principles, because sometimes we tend to forget about them. Now I hear a lot, no, we need to go straight. Yes, fantastic. But if we go straight, we may be missing around given principle to respect the rule of law. So how we can be quicker respecting our basic principles, because if we become inconsistent, incoherent, we could not be making any favor to us. But at the same time, it is absolutely true that we need to ensure that we have the capacity to evolve, to adapt, and to identify in an anticipated manner the challenges around us. And the challenges are already there, and we will do our best. I come from the sustainability policies background, so I know very well that I need to do my share so to facilitate the life of the just following generation, so you. But these will probably be the challenges that you will have to face in the time to come. Now the world is not so easy to be identified in given bubbles, but the relationships and the interdependencies are huge. So how to avoid being too weak because it is unbalanced, how to ensure that we stick to the principles and values, how we can ensure the good quality of life for the people that surround us and the people that are a little bit far beyond, but that also have this aspiration of a better life, and how we can do it through the law and through a well-functioning market that can allow the next generation of innovators to challenge the existing prominent incumbents in a certain market. So just to say that I have enjoyed a lot this conversation. I guess that we should have the opportunity to repeat it. But thank you, thanks a lot. And I wish you all the best possible luck on whatever you decide to do, including these demands of facilitating affordable housing, bridging from education to professional life, including research, opportunities for all with no bias in terms of gender or origin or the place where you want to live, you want to move, or you want to remain. But thanks a lot to you all, and I guess that we will have an opportunity to come across wherever, whenever, and good luck. Thank you. Thanks.